taken up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believe that what he says will come to pass. It will be done for him. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you received it, and it shall be yours. Brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, whatever you are going through, we need you to believe today. When I came through cancer, I believed that it was just over for me. I believed my life was over. I believed that who is going to want someone in my condition? But you know something? I persevered, and I stopped trying to find that one person for myself, and I gave it to God. And I asked God to give me a wife, and he gave me the wife that would love me, that I could love, and that would want me for who I was. See, what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to stop looking and let God lead us to that person. So, my brothers and sisters, have faith today. The most difficult project in the world is the reconstruction of the human mind. That's a hard thing to do, but God is able to give you a brand new mind. So whatever it is that you're going through on this Tuesday, put God first. Let faith be your eyes. Let faith be your eyes, because we walk by faith and not by sight. We're not walking by sight. We're walking by faith. So remember, there is indeed a way out of your mess, and it's JESUS. Have faith today.
Where can you buy a brand new Nissan with a lifetime warranty? Kingston Pike. Hey, folks, Gerald Anderson with Ted Russell Nissan. You heard it right. Every new Ted Russell Nissan comes with a lifetime warranty, and that's a long, long time. Ted Russell Nissan on Kingston Pike.
Good morning, and welcome to AM 1380 WYSH and Ask Your Neighbor. Ask Your Neighbor can also be heard and seen on our website, WYSHradio.com. And if you are in Anderson, Roane, or Morgan County and have Comcast cable, you can watch Ask Your Neighbor on BBB TV Channel 12. Ask Your Neighbor is the program where you call in and do just that. Ask Your Neighbor. Do you have a comment? Do you have a problem? Or do you have a question? Then call in and ask your neighbor. 865-457-1380 or toll free at 877-711-4005. And for those of you that might be listening or watching on the internet, you can email from our website, WYSHradio.com. Just click on the Contact Us button and email your questions. Now sit back and listen as listeners throughout East Tennessee and the entire world answer your questions on Ask Your Neighbor on BBB TV 12 and AM 1380 WYSH.
Welcome to Ask Your Neighbor. Today we have a special guest, Dr. David Ayers, who's going to speak with you. And we're ready. Welcome, Doctor.
Howdy.
We are. Let me make sure you're on. You are on. Okay. Welcome here with us. We'll let you go ahead and just take the show.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. It's been a month, I guess. Next time it'll be around July the 4th. It's coming on the first Tuesday of every month. And I guess Ron's away enjoying the fun in the sun. And I'm sure he'll be back soon. And Melissa's with us here today, if you've not heard her reading jokes on the internet. We got a call one time on this show from Australia. You were talking about the internet and the reach of the show. Yeah, got a call from North Shore of Australia. And a doctor called from Philadelphia once. Give comments. So the show's a lot better, as you guys know, if you guys call in, because your questions are much better than anything that I've prepared. I have to just make up stuff to fill time waiting on you to call. So please call. And remember that the opinions are those of Dr. David Ayers, not necessarily the station or its advertisers. So if you get upset with somebody about something I say, then just my opinion. And it's free. And if you got questions, anything about your health whatsoever, or about anything else for that matter, because I did family practice for 30 years, And one thing about family practice medicine, I tell people my knowledge is as broad as the ocean and as deep as a farm pond. I know something about a lot of things, and I know a lot about nothing. So that's what your primary care doctor is there for.
We got a call.
Good.
Hey, caller, go right ahead.
Good morning, Dr. Ayers.
Morning.
Are you available?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to see what you would recommend for someone that has heartburn that comes up in your throat. No matter what I eat, drink, I have it. I have it when I go to bed. I have it when I get up. Any recommendations, and I would just listen.
Okay. It's a good question because it's the problem a lot of people have. And this falls into the realm of GERD, G-E-R-D, or gastroesophageal reflux disease. And like I say, a lot of people have that. Sometimes it's just certain foods will set people off, and sometimes like a person calling in, everything sets it off. Sometimes it will burn, and sometimes it won't. I guess is there a health problem with it? Occasionally, because the cells at the end of your swallowing tube or the esophagus can start to look different as they get damaged by the acid. Because your stomach has a protective lining to keep it safe from the acid that it makes. And it's pretty strong acid in your stomach. But your swallowing tube has no protection. So if the contents of your stomach start making it up into your swallowing tube, it can change the cells there so that they look a little peculiar. And some people are concerned that it might at some point lead to some kind of malignancy. And that's called a Barrett's esophagus. It's not cancer, but it's called like precancer cells. And the other thing it can do, it can scar it. So you go swallow a big mouthful of mashed potatoes one day and it gets stuck. It won't go down because the bottom of your swallowing tube is so scarred from the acid coming up that it doesn't open to let the food pass. So what can you do about it? Well, some things make it worse. And of the things that are out there commonly, caffeine is the worst. Caffeine causes a little pucker muscle. There's a little pucker muscle at the bottom of your swallowing tube, sort of like your caboose back there. And it sort of separates the two. But caffeine makes it hang open. So it's going to make reflux worse if you use caffeine. 2, if you have any kind of extra weight, just pushing on your belly, of course, it's going to make reflux worse because if it's a leak at the top and you're pushing on it, then it's going to make it worse. If you eat a large meal, you eat a whole lot at one time and your stomach is distended. If it's got a leak at the top, it's going to leak worse. So small meals often, and avoiding caffeine, those kinds of things will help. Medicine-wise, Zantac got dinged the other day. It's some kind of association with malignancy, but it traditionally has been a very good drug. I think if you're going to use it for a short period of time, it's great. You can take it about 20 minutes before you eat, and it will tend to block the acidity. It doesn't change the fact you're refluxing, because that's a mechanical problem. But it will make the stuff coming up not acidic, so it doesn't burn your swallowing tube, and therefore you tend not to have a lot of symptoms with it. If it's really, really bad, and a lot of these are associated with a thing called a hiatal hernia, and a hernia is something pushing through a hole it ought not to be pushing through. And a hiatal hernia, the top of your stomach tends to push up into your chest, and it can make it leak worse. So if it's really, really bad, or the cells are getting damaged at the bottom of the swallowing tube, sometimes they'll do a procedure called a fundoplication, or a Nissen fundoplication. It used to be a monstrous procedure. They'd have to cut you almost halfway in two to get up in there to work on it because it's up under your ribs. But now they can do it with a scope, and it's not so aggressive. But they basically take the top of your stomach and they tight around the bottom of your swallowing tube so you don't reflux. So in the worst situations, that's what has to be done. That's a little surgical procedure. But short of that, small meals, avoid caffeine, and lose weight, and that might help. Don't eat and lay down flat because then holes on the side, and it's obviously going to leak worse. Those are non-medicine things you can do. Medicine, I think Pepsid famotidine would probably be a better choice right now. Long term, you can use Prilosec and stuff like that, but it's got some long term problems with it too. For a month or so to get things turned around, I think it's fine. So Pepcid would be probably a pill if you wanted to take a pill. But remember, that only stops the acidity. It doesn't stop the reflux. Nothing can stop the reflux.
I had that issue before. I had to go in and have an upper GI, lower GI, all this stuff. They couldn't find anything. It was a food allergy. It was just upsetting the whole digestive system.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more food allergies, and I'm not exactly sure why. It may be our food's messed up. I mean, one thing I've said on the radio show time and again, if you pick up a package and you look at the ingredients and it's a paragraph, just put it back down. No food ought to be a paragraph. It should say maybe water, salt, and then whatever the thing is. And we have too much additives to our food, and we have no idea what all these chemicals do to people. Not really at all. In fact, allergies in general are very high, and some of that's due to the immunizations that we do. But just in this little radio booth here, you got Formica. We don't really know what that does to people. You got this padding on the wall to keep the sound reflections down. We don't know what that does to people. Computer with the screens and stuff made of, we have no idea what any of this does to people. And we're surrounded by this in our homes. In fact, the air in your home is probably the dirtiest air you'll breathe. You need to get outside. We're just surrounded by a lot of things. And, you know, cancer's gone way up since the early 1900s, so around 1940 or so. We didn't have cancers much before that. But then their houses just had maybe some wood. They had maybe cotton, maybe wool, some natural things. And with this growth and industrialization, we've exposed our bodies to a whole host of things that we really have no clue what they do to people. So keep calling. That's a great question. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of familiarity with the reflux, but it is a mechanical problem. Like there's some things you can do to make it better. If it's really, really bad, then surgery's probably the way to go. Though in spite of as common as reflux is, you have to, the esophageal cancer is still pretty rare. So it's not very common to let somebody get cancer from it. Let's talk about, let's move to food. Let's talk about food a little bit. You know, a lot of our food has glyphosate in it, which is Roundup, or atrazine. And those are two chemicals that we're getting a lot of. You're getting it. If you eat food, you're getting it, okay? It's just, I mean, it used to be farmers cultivated their fields. And cultivated means they took a little harrow of some kind and they scratched the dirt in between the rows of the plants to keep the weeds down. Well, then Monsanto came up with this idea. What if we put this herbicide on the fields and just kill all the plants? Well, that works good, except your corn dies too, or your soybeans die. They said, well, we're going to genetically modify the seeds so that this seed of corn that we make, it's resistant to glyphosate or Roundup. And these soybean plants, they're resistant to it. So you can just plant your crops, then spray the whole field with glyphosate, and then no weeds won't come up. We have these beautiful fields. Well, it's then in the corn, it's then in the soybeans, and then it's in the dirt and the water. And you can't get water in the United States right now that really doesn't have glyphosate in it. Or atrazine, which is another one they use. Now, I know a lot of people laughed at a certain commentator on the radio that talked about frogs turning into girls, boy frogs turning into girl frogs. But it does happen. Atrazine can turn a boy frog into a girl frog. And it's not, it won't just do it to frogs. It does it worse to the amphibians because their skin is, if you picked up a salamander, or a frog, it's not fully developed, or even a full-blown frog, their skin absorbs a lot because it's a mucousy kind of skin. So that's why they're hit the worst. But it affects people the same way. These are endocrine disruptors. They disrupt the endocrine system, and they do it in people just the same as they do it in these little frogs. So it depends on how much you're exposed to over time. And it's sad in some ways. Commercial farming is killing us, and we're all just sort of letting it happen. We need to go back to probably the little local farms where they actually hoed the corn or the potatoes, and we need to get rid of soybeans anyway. You can't pick up a package and say soy lecithin on it. It's just in everything, and it is an endocrine disruptor. That's where you get the whole term soy boys, these sort of effeminate males that have been raised on soy milk and tofu and all this stuff. Some soy sauce on your Oriental food, that's fine. But if you're doing it all the time, it's going to cause issues. And right now, birth rates are down in the United States. Japan's already crossed the border that they're hopeless. There's really nothing they can do to turn their culture around. They're just going to disappear. And Italy's the same way. The whole culture's going to disappear. They're not making enough babies to replace themselves.
And some of them are being born with defects.
Yeah, it will cause defects. Mm-hmm. The United States, we're headed that way. So my word to the people in the United States, have babies, okay? Have babies, because we need babies. It takes like 2.5 babies per couple to replace them. And your best baby-making years for you women out there is between 18 and 25. And almost all women are waiting until after that to have their kids. So about 1 in 5 couples are having trouble getting pregnant. And it's just because you wait so late.
Yeah.
Got a call?
Mm-hmm. Hello, caller. Go right ahead.
I had called about the acid, and I wanted to ask him what kind of doctor would I see to see about that surgery.
Okay. It's a good question. You may want to start out with seeing a gastroenterologist. Because
Neurologist?
A gastroenterologist.
Gastroenterologist.
Oh, okay.
Or GI doctor would be the short term for it.
Yeah, and it's definitely not weight with me. I weigh probably 90 pounds. So.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
I went and had a test done.
Yes.
And when I had that test done, he told me that he was a lung doctor, but he told me he was going to forward my information to my family doctor.
Yes.
And when I got in touch with them, they said nothing. So I thought he may have found something in that test that he done. It was a CT, more extensive CT.
Right.
And was supposed to be from my forehead down to my bottom parts.
Yeah.
And I thought that he might have found something, like I said, in the ear, nose, and throat part, because he told me he was going to forward that to the family doctor.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk about the medical people to see in your case. What the gastroenterologist...
Okay. I'll hang up.
Okay. What the gastroenterologist would do, or the GI doctor, he would scope you from the top, and he would look at down there, and he may biopsy it and see if the cells are changing because they've been exposed to the acidity and how bad a problem you've got. If things are getting tight down there, they can use a thing called a bougie tube, which will expand the esophagus. They're basically like little hoses. They get bigger and bigger and bigger. So they take one and then the next and the next, and it will dilate it if food's starting to hang up on people. And then he can get an idea just how bad a situation you've got. If it looks bad and he can't give you any medicines to make it better, because he may want to try on certain medications and then scope you later and see if it got better. But if it's bad, then you can set you up with a surgeon. Usually a surgeon would do the procedure. And I'm sure some surgeons do more of the procedure than other surgeons. So you want to find somebody that does it regularly. And like I say, now they do it with a scope through your belly button. And they basically pull the stomach down and then tie the top of the stomach around the bottom of the swallowing tube, and it keeps it from sliding back up into the chest. So.
You got another caller. caller. You got a question? Go right ahead.
What's the best thing for a tick bite?
Tick bites.
That's a great question. Why don't you hang up and I'll wax eloquent about it. When I first came on the radio here, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, whenever that was, Lyme disease was very uncommon in Tennessee. And so mostly I just reassured people that they probably didn't get it. It's not the case now. Lyme disease is spread. And just so you know what Lyme disease is, Lyme disease is really an arthritic kind of thing. It can cause neurologic defects as well, such as Bell's palsy, where you have your face drops. It started in Lyme, Connecticut. That's where it gets its name. It has nothing to do with citrus fruits. So it's Lyme. And a lot of people in the conspiracy world think that it came from Plum Island. Now, Plum Island is right off the coast of Lyme, Connecticut, and that's where they did all the experiments on parasites. This is a parasite that gets into these deer ticks. So let's say there's 3 kinds of ticks around here commonly. I'm sure there's more, but the 3 that get involved medically. There's the little tiny deer ticks. They're about as big as the head of a pin. I mean, they are very small. In fact, you probably would never know you even got one on you, except most of us develop an allergic reaction to the bite, like a mosquito bite, and you start scratching it. You may scratch it off before you even realize that it's so small it'd fit right into your fingernail. That's the kind that carries Lyme disease. Now, Lyme disease typically has a target rash. So if you get bit by a little tick and you pull it off, you can just watch it. And what would happen be we get red around the bite, and then that would get bigger and bigger. And as we get bigger, the center would clear up. So you'd be left with a circle. And it can get really big, this circle. So it's called like a target rash, because it looks like, you think of the Target logo for the store. If you had that, then definitely you need to be treated. And the thing to treat it with is usually doxycycline. Though there are other antibiotics that work, but typically they start with doxycycline and take it for 7 days. Longer if people have complications, but typically 7 days antibiotic. This is a rickettsial disease. Now, the regular old wood ticks that we've had forever and ever, people call them dog ticks sometimes, those can carry Rocky Mountain spotted fever and some other diseases. Doxycycline will work for those as well. And this is a prescription medicine. But if you've tried to look online, you could probably find a way to get it without a prescription. Typically, the dose for an adult is 100 milligrams twice a day. For me, when I get a tick, I tend to pull it off, and I just wait and watch and see what happens. You know, if you have big swollen lymph nodes or big red area, then, yeah, I might go ahead and start antibiotics. The third kind of tick that's out there is the Lone Star tick. And they call it that because it looks like it's got a Lone Star on the back, like a Texas tick. And it can cause, like, food allergies where people have trouble eating meat. You can develop an allergy to meat. That's pretty rare. But it's going to be a little bit more common. It'd be very tragic for most of us if we couldn't eat red meat because the tick bit us. But those are 3 ticks you need to look out for. Basically, we talk about preventing ticks. If you wear light-colored clothes, that helps you see the things. If you keep your socks over your pants at the bottom, if you're going to be out where they can't get up your legs. If you have somebody look you over after you, there's a Brad Paisley song, Check for Ticks or something. Check you over after you come in for the day. In your hair, you can take your blow dryer and set it on low heat and just blow your hair, because what it does, it'll blow the hair out of the way clear to the scalp, and then somebody can go over your head looking for the ticks there. But like I say, these deer ticks are really small. They're saying about 1 out of 20 ticks have Lyme disease, but most of them can't give it for some reason. So I don't know what the actual numbers are, but let's face it, every deer, every raccoon, every squirrel would have Lyme disease it was super prevalent in the ticks out there because they all have ticks on them. And just have to watch it. You don't need to run to the doctor every time you get a tick bite. But obviously, if you get a red circle around it, or it looks like it's infected, or you're starting to feel bad, there's actually a thing called tick paralysis. It's very rare. Never seen a case. But sometimes a tick will bite somebody, and they'll go paralyzed. They can't move. So they bring this person in, and it's just there. And they find a tick on them. They pull the tick off, and immediately they go back to normal. I really wouldn't worry about that, but it's just something to file away in your brain. So mostly just pull them off and watch them. If you got to, go to the doctor or take doxycycline. All right. That is a common problem this time of year. Ticks are going to get worse, usually up through June. They start settling down about August. And it's better to prevent them. And you can use a variety of sprays that have DEET in them, or some new ones that don't. Sometimes those help and sometimes those don't. But you need to get outside, by the way. Don't stay indoors. That's bad. We just said the air was bad indoors, but also there's no sunshine indoors. And you need to get at least 20 minutes a day of sunshine on as much skin as you can expose without getting arrested. People are way too low in vitamin D in this country. And we know from COVID, anybody had a vitamin D of 50 or above, they didn't end up in the hospital, they didn't end up on a vent, and they didn't die. Because it plays a big role in your immune system. Vitamin D is very big. You should probably take 2,000 units a day. It comes in international units. 2,000 units a day in the summer, maybe 5,000 a day in the winter when we don't get any sun exposure. That would improve our health a lot. Another big part of the immune system, which we don't talk about much, is the bacteria that live in your colon. This is sort of relatively new information. There's this Bifidum bacteria that live in your intestine. It plays a big role in your immune system. And one thing about the COVID-19 shot is that it destroyed that bacteria in a lot of people. It's what left a lot of people immune depressed or immune suppressed. So get a lot of sunshine. You can replace sometimes the bacteria in your colon by taking probiotics. That's what a probiotic is. It's a bacteria. It's a capsulized bacteria. And some of them have 2 or 3 bacteria, and some of them are just 1. Yogurt, they use bacteria to make milk into yogurt. So if you eat yogurt with live cultures, you get bacteria in your colon. But I think going forward, we're going to find that's been a big part of people. And remember, if you get down to cancer in and of itself is an immune system failure. We probably all come down with cancerous cells every day. Our immune system's very good. It identifies them and destroys them. So for somebody to get a cancer, that means the immune system failed in its surveillance of your body, and this thing cut loose. That's why people who take immunosuppressives, for like rheumatoid arthritis, or lupus, or ankylosing spondylitis, or any of these autoimmune diseases, they end to have more cancers than people who don't take those medicines. People who've had kidney transplants or liver transplants or lung or heart transplants, they have more cancers than people that don't, because they have to suppress their immunity to keep their body from rejecting the grafts that they got. Now, the good thing, if you up in line for a kidney transplant, there is a novel treatment by using adult stem cells, not fetal stem cells, but adult stem cells. They inject it into the body like 7 days after they've had the kidney transplant. And about 85% of those people within a year are on 0 immunosuppressives. That's big news. That's big news. 85% are totally off all the immunosuppressives, which means your immune system's not depressed, which means that their cancer risk isn't elevated. And they don't have to feel bad, because sometimes, you get your kidney and you feel better because you didn't have a kidney, you were on dialysis, and then all the medicine they give you to keep you from rejecting the kidney makes you feel about as bad as you did before. Okay. There was a court case involving ivermectin. You've had a couple of court cases involving ivermectin since the COVID-19 thing. From all I've seen, and I've seen quite a bit, ivermectin worked very well for COVID-19, regardless of when it was used. Now, the hydroxychloroquine, it works well early. And we've known that since 2005. That really wasn't even news. In fact, Fauci, who's been on the news lately, his group did the study in 2005 showing that hydroxychloroquine was effective at not only preventing coronavirus, but also treating coronavirus. You can look that study up. It's online. So we knew that already. That wasn't really news. Ivermectin was sort of news. And if you remember, the FDA did a big commercial out there. It said, come on, y'all, don't take horse medicine for this coronavirus. That was their biggest meme they ever put out. It went viral. I guess no pun intended. But the problem was it did work. And there was a court case over that, and the FDA had to take down all those things. They didn't make FDA pay anybody any money. Well, you had people that died. But there is a court case now where a lady was in the hospital. She had all the regular therapies. They put her on a vent, and they'd given her remdesivir and all that stuff, and she was still not getting better. And the family said, what will it hurt? Just give her some ivermectin. So the doctor wrote ivermectin. The pharmacy in the hospital refused to fill it because they'd been told not to fill it. And so they went to court. The judge said, give her the ivermectin. Well, how do you care? You know, she's dying. And she got better. And then they wrote for 5 days. And then she started to get worse again. And they said, well, let's write for more of it. So the doctor wrote for 35 days of it. And the pharmacy refused to fill it in the hospital again. And then they made him fill it, but then they stopped it and wouldn't give it to her, and she died. So now that case is in court. They tried to get it, said, we're protected by the PrEP Act. You can look that act up. It's a horrible piece of legislation. It basically gives immunity to the pharmaceutical companies for doing all kinds of horrible stuff. The PrEP Act. And the judge said, sorry, I won't cover you on this. So this case is going ahead, and it will determine a lot of what happens with ivermectin going forward. But ivermectin is very safe, probably safer than Tylenol, and people consume that stuff by the handfuls. All right, let's talk about apricot pits. If you remember back in the 70s, I think it was, if you've been alive that long, not a lot of you listen to the radio show have been around that long. You remember Laetrile, and everybody was going to Mexico to get Laetrile for their cancer. Well, the news and the science just poo-pooed that drug until you couldn't even say the name out loud without getting laughed at. But now it seems like it was a decent thing to do. And maybe it helps prevent cancers as well. You'll hear it called by apricot pits, Laetrile, vitamin B17. Those are all the same thing. And they said, no, eat apricot pits because it will have cyanide, and that will hurt you. That does not appear to be true. There is some cyanide generated, but it doesn't appear to be harmful. Some people eat a lot of these things a day, 40 or 50. I would not recommend that. But I think 3 a day might be something to consider. It's not going to hurt you. If you get a bellyache, because sometimes you start any kind of new thing, it's going to give you a bellyache. Then you back off and start with a half of one a day and work your way up till you're getting 2 or 3 a day. And that'd be, there's some evidence that it treats cancer, some evidence that it prevents cancer. But it's something to consider. Just because we have a lot of cancer these days. It's like the second leading cause of death. Or it's about equal, really, with about 40% of us die of heart disease, 40% of us die of cancer, and the other 20% of us die of other stuff. So cancer's a big killer in the United States right now. There was a study done back in the 1990s where they asked cancer doctors would they take the chemotherapy if they got cancer, and most of them said no, they wouldn't take it. Because honestly, if you look at the overall stats on it, it's considering we've had the American Cancer Society around since the 1940s. So we're talking about 80 years of the American Cancer Society, how little progress they've made in that field. Now, I'm sure they tell you they've made all this great progress, but you and I know that cancer is a very scary diagnosis because in our experience, with our family and friends, it usually doesn't go real well. When I think it probably could go a whole lot better. But the treatment is bad. If you remember, getting cancer is a fault of your immune system. And yet almost all the therapies we have out there destroys the immune system. Right? You can't go around your friend getting cancer chemotherapy with a cold because they have no immune system. Well, how is that supposed to help? You know. And of course, people's hair falls out. They get all kinds of GI problems. The treatment is almost, and maybe is, as bad as the disease. I think if the Lord doesn't come back soon and time passes on, they're going to look back at the way we treated cancer, the way we look back on people who put leeches on people in George Washington's time or bled them out. We think that was a barbaric thing to do. At the time, I'm sure it was the thing to do. But we need to really have a close look at cancer. So you might consider apricot pits, like say 2 or 3 a day. Some people take 40, but I would recommend you not start out there, definitely. And you can talk it over with your doctor, or you can look online, do your own research. I'm just throwing stuff out here based on my own little bits of research that I've done. Concierge medicine is on the rise. Concierge medicine is where your doctor says, I'm not going to be a regular doctor anymore. I'm going to have like a certain clientele. You can sign up to be part of that clientele, and you'll pay me X amount of dollars per month, and I'll be there to take care of you. And that's like stuff rich people used to do. But now more and more doctors are getting into it because the hassle of being a doctor has got almost out of hand. Now, I don't practice anymore, but my brother still practices. And they told him the other day that he was going to have to fill out all of his own prescriptions, fill out all his own lab forms, fill out all his own x-ray forms. And, you know, that's not a good use of a doctor's time. The doctor's time ought to be spent talking to you. And not have to be filling out paperwork, but that's what they're pushing doctors to do. And what they're going to do is they're going to slide in artificial intelligence because people think that'll make better doctors. But remember, artificial intelligence has no empathy or even sympathy. It can fake it, I guess, but it doesn't really care about you. It's just a thing. And I'll be surprised how that works out. Some people probably like it and some people won't. But it's getting to the point where they're going to try to get a machine to take care of you, just using an algorithm. Polio, you know, I was a big fan of immunizations. In fact, I've had all my immunizations, except got the COVID, I quit. I went to India twice, did missionary trips, and I had to get shot a lot to go there. But the thing about COVID is caused us to step back and look at the vaccinations. You remember last month we went through all of them, and if you got all the shots recommended between birth and age 18, you'd have about 90 shots. Now, if you believe in God, are you going to tell him that he messed up so badly that we have to give people 80 or 90 shots in the first 18 years of life to make up for the deficits he created? I just think that's ludicrous. And if you realize there were no safety studies on any vaccine prior to it being released, like zero safety studies, they sort of put it out there. They fall into this thing called GRAS, G-R-A-S. That's what the FDA uses. It's called generally regarded as safe. It means we think, well, vaccines are safe, so a new vaccine, we're not going to make them do all these studies. If you get antibodies from it, then it works. Well, that's not even right, because your immune system's a lot more than antibodies. And one reason the COVID shot really didn't work, among a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is the antibodies it made were in your blood, and you breathed this thing in. So it was in your sinuses, and it was in your lungs, not in your blood. So, yeah, you may have antibodies in your blood, but it didn't really help that much. Even for the few weeks that it worked, after about 3-4 weeks, it really fell off in effectiveness. So I think we need a hard look. My statement would be we need a moratorium on all vaccines until we take a good look at them. Do we really need all these shots? I say no. There's no way on earth we need this many shots. It messes little kids up, and it's associated with SIDS. I had 2 cases of SIDS in my career, and it's the most tragic thing you can see, because you may have had a child in your office who was totally well, came in for a 6-month checkup, and then 3 days later you get a call, it's dead. It died in sleep. And if you've had SIDS in your family, you know how tragic SIDS is. You blame yourself, like there are things over its face and all that, but it's not. I think when all's said and done, it's got something to do with the immune system. It's definitely tied to immunizations. One thing about 2020, when kids didn't go to the doctor because nobody was going to the doctor during 2020, SIDS almost disappeared. Did you know that? It just went poof. So like the way flu went poof when COVID came out. Makes you wonder. Flu shot, it really doesn't work that well. And the people who quote, need it, end quote, the most are the elderly. And it really doesn't work in the elderly, because when you get older, your immune system really doesn't respond to a vaccine the way it does when you're younger. And by the time you're older, really, you've been exposed to every version of the flu anyway. Does that mean nobody's going to die of the flu? Yeah, people are going to die of the flu. But the shot's effectiveness usually is around 20% or something like that. I don't know how many shots you'd have to give to save one life. It'd be a whole lot. So a lot of people got to get shot to save one life. Okay. And then let's talk about polio. Well, this is the thing. The AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, they have a form for your doctor. If you refuse to get your kids shots, they want you to sign this form saying you refused, and it's got all this thing. Don't sign that form. If your doctor throws you out, then just find another doctor, because that form is going to throw all the liability onto you, and it's not right, and it could be used against you. If they want to take your kids and you've signed this form, and then they've got a piece of evidence on you. So do not sign the refusal forms. Okay, sure.
Thank you for calling. Go right ahead.
I was just wanting to know a little bit about the shingle shot. Do you recommend it?
Short answer is no. I'm not recommending any shots now. This is me. I'm telling you, this is just me. But I just think, the shingle shot is basically to keep you from having an outbreak of the chickenpox you had when you were a kid. And there was a lot of shingles after the COVID shot because it hurt your immunity, and then people broke out with shingles. That was one of the biggest side effects of the COVID shot was shingles. But I just think we don't really know what's in all these shots. I mean, if we really know what was in all these shots, then we probably wouldn't even touch them. We'd probably read like the label on the food at the grocery store, be a paragraph, when you really should just be like 1 or 2 things in there. So I'm just saying, moratorium, all shots until we get things figured out.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing, Dr. David. We appreciate you being here today. And sure. Thanks, everybody who listened and had questions. We hope you all have a blessed day. Thanks for tuning in to WYSH.
Thank you for listening to AM 1380 WYSH and Ask Your Neighbor. Make sure you tune in at 10 a.m. each day, Monday through Friday, right here on AM 1380 WYSH and BBB TV 12. Or listen live online at WYSHradio.com. And remember, if you have a question, comment, or problem, call in tomorrow and ask your neighbor.